Hendrick Motorsports breaks its Daytona 500 winless streak with William Byron winning the Great American Race. And let's talk about a wild and very controversial finish to the 2024 Daytona 500. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about the 2024 Great American Race, the Daytona 500, where William Byron is able to win in a wreck on the final lap and a very controversial finish on why NASCAR threw the caution when they did. Did he really beat Alex Bowman when the caution was thrown? We'll break all that down. We had some big names, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, that were fast all day long. They did not finish in the first position, winning this race. Had a couple of big wrecks. We had a really big wreck with 8 laps to go. We'll break all that down here today on Dirty Air. We have a jam-packed show. I'm excited. It's the Daytona 500, the biggest race of the season, and we have to start out by talking about the driver that'll be on all the headlines going into, I guess, Tuesday morning, and that's going to be William Byron getting the victory tonight. Huge win for William Byron. This is his 11th career win. This is his first career Daytona 500 win, although he has won at Daytona in July of 2020. He won the 2020 summer race, which was his first ever career win when he won that race at that time. So William Byron has matured into a really well-respected driver, a driver that's respected all around in the garage area. He makes minimum mistakes. He made no mistakes today, minimum mistakes today. He made the right moves all day long, which is why he is now a Daytona 500 champion. Remember, he made the Final Four last year, so had a chance to win a NASCAR Cup championship just one season ago, or really just a few months ago at this point. Unfortunately, did not win that, so he still hasn't got that championship, but this is the next biggest thing, if not bigger than a championship, is winning the Daytona 500 for William Byron. This takes his career to a whole nother level. This takes his fame to a whole nother level. I talk to people that don't watch NASCAR every year after the Daytona 500. The only driver's name they're saying is the driver that won the race. This is big for William Byron, big for Hendrick Motorsports as well. We'll talk about that, but let's take a look at the finish, and we'll kind of dive into this and break all of this down. You see here Ross Chastain in the high lane. You see that white car. You see the blue Busch car, Ross Chastain in the high lane. You see the white car of Austin Cindric on the bottom lane. Austin Cindric turns up a little bit trying to make a good move. I think he was explaining in his interview he got shoved a little bit by Corey LaJoie behind him in the 7 car, and they just collided, one coming down, one coming up, and that's kind of a racing incident. I mean, it's just being aggressive at Daytona, 2 cars colliding and flying to the infield. The caution was shortly thrown after that. They did get to the white flag, which means the race would end at the moment of caution. And this is the only picture I was able to find that the broadcast showed. I wish there was a little bit more of an analysis of this so the fans could have seen a little better, maybe been more satisfied, especially Alex Bowman fans, because Alex Bowman was ultimately going to win the race if the caution was thrown a second or 2 later. But the rule is not, to go back to the last time loop, which is some arguments I've seen, the rule is not when the caution lights come on. The rule is NASCAR going back and analyzing exactly when the caution button was hit, the moment the caution came out. That is usually when the green light that's around the racetrack turns off. It then, half a second later or whatever, switches to yellow, which means you're under caution. But when that green light turns off, that is most likely indicating the moment of caution. You can see clearly with this picture here, I was able to find that Alex Bowman is slightly behind William Byron, has not quite cleared him yet, and it's really unfortunate. I don't think you can blame NASCAR. If you're an Alex Bowman fan, I'd be really frustrated. I understand that as a fan that's really loyal to a driver. I know that's very frustrating to see, but that's the rule that the NASCAR followed the rule. You can argue all day whether the caution. It's really just a bad situation. It's the same thing with NASCAR moving the race from Sunday to Monday. There's no good situation when you have to postpone the Daytona 500. There's no good situation when they're wrecking coming to the white flag in the Daytona 500. NASCAR can't leave it green because you're gonna have cars, debris, all that sitting on the front straightaway where you can't have cars going 200 miles an hour through there to finish the race. So you have to throw the caution, but you can't wait and throw it after Bowman takes the lead. You can't do it. You can't pick who wins the race, right? You have to just throw the caution after the wreck takes place, after there has to be a caution. So, but William Byron, clearly the winner of the Daytona 500. Alex Bowman came up really close. Even he said in his interview he knew he didn't quite get it. But what a race for Hendrick Motorsports. And I want to talk about this for a minute because we knew going into the 500, it's been since 2014 with Dale Jr., since Hendrick Motorsports has won the Great American Race. None of the current Hendrick Motorsports drivers went into today with a Daytona 500 win. And you could tell that was a change in narrative from previous years. I think previous years, it was win the pole for the 500. We got a good shot to win the Daytona 500 every year for Hendrick. This year going into it that they wanted to get back to winning NASCAR's biggest race, the Crown Jewel race, and you could tell that correlated over on to the race tonight. You had we can go back to, let's take a look at the end of stage one, right? You have all these teams working together. Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Kyle Larson, all working together all day long to push themselves to the front. There was some serious effort put into these race cars and put into a plan to win the Great American Race today, and you saw that all day. We can go back to any lap in this race, or majority of laps in this race, the Hendrick cars were pitting together. The Hendrick cars were executing everything well together on pit road. The crew chiefs were doing a perfect job. The strategy was going perfect. They were together all day long, pushing each other and helping each other out and not wrecking each other all day long. That's why a Hendrick Motorsports driver won this Daytona 500. That's the most teamwork I've seen out of these current four drivers in the 500 or at any plate race or super speedway race in a really long time. So that's why they were able to get the win. Let's go back. We'll talk about a little bit more of the other storylines. We had we start out the Daytona 500 for about 4:30. Then we have our first wreck of the day, which was unfortunately on lap 5. You see Brad Keselowski, who, how many times since the Next Gen era 2022 have we seen Brad Keselowski, the car he's pushing, get wrecked in the tri-oval? Just want to say that I'm not gonna blame somebody again, but we saw it Thursday night. We saw it 2022 500. Saw it multiple times in the 2022 Daytona 500. I think we saw it in the 2023 500. We saw it today. We saw it Thursday. Just want to point that out, that's another wreck in the tri-oval from the car Brad Keselowski's pushing. I'm not blaming him. I'm just pointing that out. I'm just going to point that out and let you guys decide what you think about that. But unfortunately, that took out some really big names. Harrison Burton was one name taken out. That unfortunately collected Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson had a fast car all day long, but with that incident, had to spend time on pit road repairing it. I think went 4 or 5 laps down, so completely taking him out of contention for any solid day whatsoever. So just wanted to mention that. Another driver that started on the front row, started in the second position today, was Michael McDowell, who I say had a good shot to win this race. Unfortunately, had engine issues from the green flag. Went 5 laps down, 6 laps down early in the race after going down pit road trying to fix those problems. I want to say he finished the race, but it was 20-something laps down. So really unfortunate there for Michael McDowell that, 2021 Daytona 500 winner, had a fast car all weekend. The engine did not hold up, had problems from the get-go, which is super unfortunate for the 34 team. We'll see how they do moving forward into the rest of this season. So I do want to talk about the big 3 drivers of today, or a couple of drivers I thought were really strong all day, and that's going to be Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Joey Logano. You could throw a few other guys in there like William Byron, who was fast, like Alex Bowman, like all the Hendrick drivers. But I really think if I look at who the fastest cars in this race were, it was Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin. Hands down, they were the fastest. There were some guys that were behind them. You had Brad Kay, you had William Byron, the winner, obviously, but those, for the majority of the race, were the fastest cars of the day. Logano could make moves whenever he wanted, led a bunch of laps. Kyle Busch was really the only driver that could go to the back to the front, the back to the front. He started in the back, was at the front for the end of stage 2, had a shot to win stage 1, had a tire fall off on pit road going into the final stage, was running top 10 the next lap. Kyle Busch was really fast, had a really good handling car. Unfortunately for him, he ended up finishing in the 12th position. Just couldn't quite get up front, have a shot to win the race. A really smart race by Kyle Busch as well, because he held back and stayed in the back when that big wreck happened. Denny Hamlin, another one of his drivers. Denny Hamlin rode in the back all day long. When he thought it was time to go up front, he came up front, was straight at the front, and was having a competitive race. But then we had the wreck on lap 8. With 8 laps to go, we had the biggest wreck of the night. We had the big one. 18 cars involved. You see it here, Ross Chastain trying to make a block. Just hard racing there. You see Alex Bowman bump William Byron a little bit too hard there. Not quite as square as you would want it to be. Bumps him a little bit on the side of the rear bumper of that race car. Gets Byron a little squirrely. Byron goes down the racetrack, collects a few other drivers, and then it's just on from there. It takes out all your heavy hitters, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, a bunch of names involved in that accident, which is very unfortunate because those were some of the best drivers, some of the favorites in this race. Denny Hamlin involved in this wreck. That opened the door for all these other drivers when we go through the top 10 to have a good finish, to have a chance to win the race, and that's when the door really opened up. And once again, you just look at it, just Bowman just being a little bit too aggressive there. Maybe Bowman should have let off. It's sort of a Daytona racing incident, but if you have to blame somebody, I think the blame does go on Bowman because Byron has nothing he can do there. He's already squirrely. You have to let off a little bit, but that's easy to say from the outside looking in. But if you have to blame somebody, I'd say that would be really a pinpointing moment in this ginormous 18-car crash. But then once again, after that, we did have the finish. I already talked about the finish, the results, and the driver that won, William Byron, edging out Alex Bowman. Of course, Ross Chastain ended up getting involved with the wreck. So let's look at the top 10. Here it goes. Once I said that big wreck on lap with 8 laps to go opened up the door for a lot of drivers that were not up front all day to get decent finishes. You had Byron get the win, Alex Bowman right behind him, unable to get that finish. But Christopher Bell, solid run for him. I want to say that's another third place finish, another top 3 finish in the Daytona 500. I want to say he finished in the top 3 a year ago. Maybe it was third, maybe it was second. I'd have to go back and look to be 100% sure. Corey LaJoie, really solid run to get a top 5 in the Daytona 500, a $28 million purse for a team like Spire Motorsports that claims they're going to win a race this year, that's trying to excel their team to winning potential. 4th place in this race, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. Huge step in the right direction for that number 7 team, Corey LaJoie. Yeah, Bubba Wallace coming in the 5th position. He was out of the race all day long. Had trouble on pit road. Had some damage on the race car, I believe. Bubba Wallace able to get up there and get a solid 5th place finish with all the cars wrecking out in front of him. AJ Allmendinger. Now, he was up front before the wreck, making some slicey, dicey moves. Able to finish in the 6th position. John Hunter Nemechek in the 42 car, starting out his Daytona 500, his new season, with a solid top 10 day. 7th place finish in the Daytona 500. That's going to be a big confidence booster. His teammate right behind him, Eric Jones, they were working together very well all day long. Unfortunately, Johnson got caught up in some trouble early. But that's a good run. That's a good start to the season for those two. The Legacy Motor Club Toyotas are expecting to have a much better year than they did last year. It was really rough last year. So a solid start to the season this year in Daytona is definitely a confidence booster for those two drivers. We'll see if that correlates over into Atlanta next week. We did have Noah Gragson, a solid top 10 run for him, and Chase Briscoe, another one of those SHR Fords back-to-back. 9th and 10th. I believe it was Kyle Larson that finished in the 11th position, so that Hendrick driver did finish right outside the top 10. Kyle Busch finishing in the 12th position. I think I mentioned that earlier after leading multiple laps. Remember, Kyle Busch has led the most laps out of any driver to never win the Daytona 500. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about the Great American Race. I tried to shove it all in. We do have Atlanta next week, which is a similar style track to Daytona. It definitely has its differences. It's definitely high banked, high speed, but it does have its differences. For one, it's a mile shorter, so it's going to be like a mini Daytona. It's going to be a little more tight. Handling's going to come into play a lot more with this racetrack than it did in this Daytona 500, which handling did come into play this year over the last couple of years. But Atlanta should be fun. I think Atlanta's going to be exciting. Hope you tune in, watch Dirty Air next week following that race, and of course, like and subscribe if you like the video. And about Kyle Busch, unfortunately, next year going into his 20th attempt at the Daytona 500. Let's get rowdy.